Committee on Government Operations will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Liberati.
Here.
Representatives Pohutsky. Here. McFall.
Here.
Posthumus.
Here.
Green. Here. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Representative Green moves to approve the minutes of the March 1st meeting. Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved. Today, we're going to take testimony and vote out House Bill 4047 and House Bill 4018. The first bill we're going to be taking up is 4047, and here to speak on his bill is Representative Bazat. And whenever you're ready.
Remember to turn this on. I always forget. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I really appreciate you taking the time to take up 4047, very important bill. We did have this on the agenda last session, but never made it to a committee vote because we started too late on it. But I wanted to get it out early. And 4047 designates February 1st as Blue Star Mother's Day. As a veteran and an advocate for military issues, I think that solidifying this date in our statute is an important action that we should take as a legislator for our great state. On February 1st, 1942, at the Duran Hotel in Flint, Michigan, 358 mothers held their first meeting to discuss starting an organization of mothers with a mission of supporting our troops and their families. Soon after, Michigan would be the first state to form a Blue Star Mothers chapter, with other states forming additional chapters in their states in years to come. I'm pleased and honored to have Jacqueline Ransom and Kathy Barnes, President of the Department of Michigan Blue Star Mothers of America, who is here to give additional testimony and information on their organization and their activities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi, I'm Kathy Barnes, and before I get into my prepared statement, I just want to thank everybody for hearing us once again. This has been going on for a while, and we would love nothing better than to be recognized by the state. So, good afternoon. I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to address the possibility of a Blue Star Mothers holiday in the state of Michigan. For those of you that are currently working on it, I wish to thank you. I began the quest after our Kalamazoo State Convention many years ago when our department president, Carol Gates, asked if anyone would want to work on a Blue Star Mother Day. I raised my hand, about 2012. So over the last 12 years, it's evolved and changed hands many times, and today, here we are. Blue Star Mothers of America was organized following a conversation between General John Pershing and Flint's own retired Army Captain, George Humphrey Mains. General Pershing had concern about the morale of the troops that were heading off to war and the direct connection that there would be between them and their mothers. If somehow the morale of the mothers could be encouraged and kept in a positive light, it would boost the morale of the fighting men. The idea to form a patriotic organization and enlist the mothers back home to form it came from this conversation. Blue Star Mothers of America was organized in the office of the Flint News Advertiser, and which was a weekly publication. Around there in a picture frame is the front page of the January 22nd, 1942 Flint News Advertiser. It has the little article on the front and a coupon. The idea to, the Blue Star Mothers of America was organized in the office of the Flint News Advertiser on January 21st, 1942 by Mr. Mains. The Flint News Advertiser was a weekly publication. On the front page on January 22nd, of the edition, there appeared an article about a proposed patriotic organization. There was also a coupon to fill out and return to the paper. In exchange for the coupon, the mother would receive a blue star to display in her window, one for each child she had overseas. The first meeting for this new organization was held on Sunday afternoon, February 1st, 1942, at the Hotel Durant. It had been 8 weeks since the United States was attacked at Pearl Harbor, 8 weeks since Flint's own son, Jack Pitcher, died in the attacks at Pearl Harbor aboard the USS West Virginia. And it was 8 weeks since our nation was thrust into a world war. Within a week, chapters were springing up all over Michigan and in other states, including Ohio, Wisconsin, Oregon, Washington, California, Pennsylvania, and New York. Thanks to the AP Newswire, it went viral. The information about the organization was then published in the Congressional Record on February 6, 1942. Yet it took until 1960 for us to obtain a congressional charter from the United States Congress. Eventually, we were incorporated and we hold a 501c3 nonprofit status. While the mission has changed some over the years, we still support our active duty military and our veterans. It is our children's service that gives us the title Blue Star Mother. And had our children not done what they did, none of us would have met. And any woman that wears this hat and the badge that we carry, they would tell you the same thing. There are other states with Blue Star Mother Days. The most recent was Ohio. The Blue Star Mothers campaigned there for approximately 2.5 months for a day on the calendar and a bill to be signed by it was signed by their lieutenant governor while their governor was running for the party nomination to run for president of the United States. We are the only historic, congressionally chartered military support organization to be founded in the state of Michigan. To ask for an annual permanent day of recognition is really a small thing after 81 years of serving our military and veterans. We only wish to appear on the state calendar. We don't ask for a day off of work, recognition from FTD, or from Hallmark. We have appreciated the continued support and the annual proclamations given to us by our legislature. And we ask both the House and the Senate that an annual holiday be observed for February 1st, and it be called Blue Star Mother's Day, or Blue Star Mothers of America Day, and signed into law by our governor. That's all we want. An annual Michigan holiday that recognizes our organization will be something that can go down in our state history, to be remembered as our World War II founding mothers are, and the mothers from each war and conflict, as well as those who have served during times of peace. We are military mothers with deep roots in Michigan. Michigan made, and in our purest form, we are pure Michigan. And I received a phone call as I was traveling down here from where we live, from Senator Rick Outman, and the Senate dropped the bill SB 235 this morning. Thank you.
You're going to have to wake your phone up. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us here and taking the time to listen to us. Well, I just want to speak to what we do and why we do what we do. But first, Tim Maggart, a singer-songwriter, wrote a song titled A Piece of Home. This song speaks to what it means to be a Blue Star mother. A line in this song, proud but scared, is exactly what it means to be a Blue Star mom. We as moms could not be more proud of our children. We as moms are scared all the time. And if you don't mind, I'd like you to listen to the song that he wrote.
Can you hear?
Somewhere in Arizona, in a humble little town, hangs a blue star in a window of a heavy-hearted house. There's a mother baking brownies like so many times before, packing
He's a personal friend besides.
Thank you for listening. That's a song none of us can listen to without crying, so excuse me. So what we do is we form a bond with other Blue Star mothers, because it's a bond that only a mother with a military child can understand. We cry on each other's shoulders, and we rejoice when our children come home. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for them to come home, we pack care boxes and send them overseas. We volunteer at veteran facilities. We greet service members at the airport when they come home for Christmas. We lay wreaths and flowers on military grave sites, and we walk in parades on 9/11. We stand a flag line at military funerals and at the airport when a military member is sent home in a coffin. We present a Gold Star banner to families who have lost their military member. We hold those families close and honor them. Becoming a Gold Star mom is our worst nightmare. We raise money for veterans' homeless shelters, service dogs for disabled veterans, clothing and personal needs at VA medical centers, and many other worthy veteran causes. We may host a picnic for a Coast Guard station, a Thanksgiving for veterans in a nursing home. We host baby showers for women veterans. We play bingo, donate Christmas cards, Easter baskets, and socks to veterans' homes. We spread awareness about the more than 22 per day veterans who end their lives. This past fall at our department convention, chapters and members donated enough grocery and gas gift cards to send $500 worth of gift cards to each of the 5 VA medical centers in Michigan. These cards are given to veterans being released from the hospital who may not have groceries when they get home or gas to even get home. And that's why we do what we do, is because our children have given us the freedom to do this. Thank you.
Open it for questions.
Yes, do you have any questions for either of us?
I just want to say I appreciate your testimony and everything you do. Thanks, Representative, for introducing this bill. And I don't know if I can speak for everybody else, but when you played that song, I had goosebumps, and I'm going to start crying now. But do we have any questions?
It's more of a comment. Can I give a comment?
Yep.
So I just want to thank you. So my mom had 2 Blue Stars in her window for a bit of a time. And then I came home before 9/11, and we turned it down to 1. But while my mom wasn't active in the local community, but they would call her and reach out, because like when my brother ended up being deployed and we didn't hear from him for a year, it's really troubling, because I was 17 when I went in, and so was my brother, and so we're just young kids, and you're still mamas always. And so I thank you for the support that you give the troops, especially as a veteran too, that there are great people back at home who care and support and send us stuff, and then even the aftercare for the veterans is really appreciated. So thank you for coming today, and thank you for giving your presentation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What branch were you in?
I was in the Navy.
Thank you. I'm a Navy Army mom.
Representative McFall?
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have a question either. I also just have a comment. I'm from Flint, and I'm very familiar with the Durant Hotel. It's not the Durant Hotel anymore, but I think it's condos now, which is good for downtown Flint. So I just wanted to thank you very much, because I had no idea that this was the only organization from Michigan. And I know from doing personal genealogy work how interactive a lot of moms were with each other, because my grandmother actually saved clippings from the Flint Journal that would have what different neighbor kids being deployed, because they used to put all of that in the newspaper where they were going and stuff. Yep. So I really appreciate all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
When I was serving our organization as department president, which is Jackie's job at this point, I held the 74th and the 75th, but the 75th convention at the Durant, and we sent out a invitation to every member of the organization. And we actually had people come from California and just about every state across the United States to Flint, because they wanted to walk in the same footsteps as our founding mothers did. And I was actually pleased to announce that my son worked with a construction company which helped resurrect the Durant from what it had become and what it is now. But we had our luncheon in the ballroom, and Tim Maggart, that sang the song, had come up and he performed for us at our banquet and our luncheon at the Durant. But thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Really appreciate it.
With that, Representative Pohutsky moves to report House Bill 4047 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Liberati.
Yes.
Representatives Pohutsky.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Postumus.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. The bill is reported with recommendation.
All right, now we're going to hear testimony on House Bill 4018. And to speak on our bill is Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having us here today. I do want to start. Our first speaker will be Dr. Karen Korematsu. Is she available virtually now?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I can't help myself. This is a slight bit awkward because we are talking about another issue that came out of World War II. And it is about Japanese Americans, but it's about people who were Americans. So I just want to start there. But if Dr. Karen Korematsu could speak.
Oh, well, I was going to say good morning, but I'm in San Francisco, so good afternoon to you all, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and tell you about my father. I'm also thank Representative McDonald for introducing this bill and all her work on it. There is a definite connection to Michigan. I'm happy to say. My father, Fred Korematsu, was born in Oakland, California, in 1919, and was an American citizen and grew up just like any other kid, hanging out with his friends and learning about the Constitution in high school. He was paying attention that day, as I tell students. That's always important because you never know when you're going to have to refer to your rights as an American citizen. And so with the when Executive Order 9066 was issued by President Roosevelt on February 19th, 1942, my father couldn't believe that as an American citizen that he would be forcibly removed from his home. All due process of law was denied. There were never any charges, hearings in court, or even access to an attorney. Of course, we were at war, and but still, my father thought it was wrong. So he disobeyed the military orders, and he was arrested and sent to first one of the detention prison centers in the Bay Area before he was sent off to one of the permanent locations in incarceration camps. This one was in Topaz, Utah. And he had an attorney that said, if need be, we'll take your case all the way to the Supreme Court. And my father thought for sure that by the time that his case, if it did reach the Supreme Court would see it was unconstitutional. On December 18th in 1944, they still found my father, the Supreme Court found my father still guilty, but it was not a unanimous decision. It was a 6-3 decision. And the dissenting opinions are still the most, relevant today. But my father never gave up hope that someday he would be able to reopen up his Supreme Court case, but he didn't know how to do that. And towards the end of the war, World War II, the government knew that the Japanese Americans were not dangerous, and community leaders would go into the incarceration camps to help people find jobs, and they could go east. And Michigan was very welcoming. The Midwest was very welcoming at that time to anyone who was of Japanese ancestry. And my father decided to visit his youngest brother, who was already in Detroit. My father thought, well, he might go to New York and try to get a job there, but he didn't like New York and he liked Michigan, so he came back to Detroit. And my mother was born in South Carolina, but received a scholarship to attend Wayne State University and received her master's in microbiology, and actually worked on penicillin research at Ford Hospital. And the church that she was attending was Woodward Avenue Presbyterian Church. And the churches in at that time were very welcoming to young people. They had these youth groups, international youth groups that they created. And so my mother met her first Japanese American person, Elma Takahashi, at Woodward Avenue Presbyterian Church. And she suggested that to have kind of a double date. And that's when my mother met my father. And they were married in Woodward Avenue Presbyterian Church. I mean, the building's still there. I would love to turn it into a youth center for Detroit, but that's another story or effort. And they started their life there, but came back to California because my grandmother wasn't well. But as I said, my father never gave up hope that someday he would be able to reopen up his Supreme Court case, but he just didn't know how to do that. However, in 1982, the evidence was found in Washington, D.C. that proved there was no military necessity for the Japanese Americans to be forcibly removed from their home. And on November 10th, 1983, in San Francisco in Federal District Court of Northern California, my father's federal conviction was overturned. And because up until that time, he had a federal prison record. He couldn't work for the government. He was denied a lot of employment. Housing was very difficult. But he was never bitter or angry. That's what was so amazing to me. He never blamed anyone. And when I learned of my father's Supreme Court case when I was only in high school and asked my father, he just simply said, it happened a long time ago. And what he did, he thought was right, and the government was wrong. And he lived by his moral principles of right and wrong. He treated everyone like he wanted to be treated, and he was involved in the community, even though we were not involved with our own Japanese American community, because they had ousted my father. They had vilified him from day one in 1942 when he first went into the incarceration camps. No one wanted anything to do with him because they thought some harm might come to them. So he always wanted alone, but he always believed that as an American citizen that we had rights, and he believed in this country. He believed in the Constitution, and he believed in the Supreme Court, even though it didn't seem like at the time that he was supported by that. And after his conviction was overturned in 1983, he could have, and actually this year is the 40th anniversary of the term. It's called coram nobis. For attorneys that went to law school, it means an error has been made before us. It's a Latin term. That was a little unknown procedure that they were able to reopen up my father's Supreme Court case and two other Supreme Court cases, Hirabayashi and Yasui. But my father didn't want something like the Japanese American incarceration to happen again. And so he crisscrossed this country and spoke to different organizations and students and adults. He spoke to the University of Michigan. and loved going back there with my mother and telling the students to keep on with upholding our civil liberties and the Constitution. And my father passed away in 2005, but he gave me the charge to carry on with education and telling his story and fighting for our civil rights. In 2009, I founded the Fred T. Korematsu Institute. And in 2010, the California State Legislature created a bill that would honor my father, but also the importance was to promote civic participation in education. So in September 2010, Governor Schwarzenegger, who was then the governor of California, signed the bill that created Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. It's about our civil liberties and the Constitution. And my father was the first Asian American in U.S. history to have a statewide day named after him. We now have other states that have followed: Hawaii, the Commonwealth of Virginia, the state of Florida, the state of Arizona a year ago, and then just the beginning of this year, Governor Murphy in New Jersey signed the bill. Also, it's the day is also honored in New York City. I understand that the students are wanting to have a statewide day named after my father. It's not a holiday. I mean, I'm sure everyone would like a holiday. It's not a day off because, that's certainly those brings up other issues. But the importance is for education and for civic participation, which is so important today. That's when my father. That's why my father received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Clinton in 2098, because of all his work, not only to fight for justice, but the importance of carrying on with education. And it's wonderful to have this connection to Michigan. I spoke to the Senate subcommittee back in February. It was freezing cold in Michigan. I hope it's a little warmer now. But nevertheless, I hope that all of you will see that this is about education and about civic participation and about upholding our civil liberties in the Constitution. I actually also work with the Department of Education as well for the state of Michigan for civics and government, as I do with other states. So if my father were there with you, he would say to remember to stand up for what is right and don't be afraid to speak up. This is really about all of us. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony and putting that personal touch on your father's story. Any questions? I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Dr. Wake, who will introduce herself and her position today.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you for the chairperson and the whole committee to have me here. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name is Naoko Wake. I'm professor of history at Michigan State University. I'm also the director of Asian Pacific American Studies program here at Michigan State. I'm here today to support the establishment of Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution in perpetuity in Michigan, so that Michiganders can better observe, celebrate, and reflect on this key moment in the U.S. history. Michiganders already have been observing Korematsu Day, recognized by a proclamation by the former governor Rick Snyder and the current governor Gretchen Whitmer. Korematsu Day has had political support across the aisle because it embodies one of the most fundamental American values, that is, civil liberty for all. 6 states already have Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties in the Constitution in perpetuity. They are Florida, Virginia, Arizona, Hawaii, California, and most recently New Jersey, as you just heard from Dr. Korematsu. An additional 6 states recognize the day by proclamation, including Illinois, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Utah, and South Carolina. Michigan occupied a special place for Fred Korematsu, obviously, as he met his wife, Catherine, in Detroit in 1946. The couple spent a few years in our state when the memories of the war and the mass incarceration of Japanese Americans were still fresh. To establish Korematsu Day in perpetuity, then, is an opportunity for Michigan to play a leading role in promoting America's core democratic value in a way deeply rooted in local and national history. Korematsu was an ordinary citizen, but his claim of citizenship at a time of national crisis was extraordinary. His activism was nonviolent, and its impact was broadly felt. When President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066 in February 1942 to incarcerate more than 120,000 Japanese Americans, allegedly because of quote-unquote military necessity during the war against Japan, Fred refused to comply. As he recalled many years later in an interview with a newspaper, his reason for refusing to follow the order was that, quote, "I didn't feel guilty because I didn't do anything wrong. Every day in school, we said the pledge of the flag with liberty and justice for all, and I believe all that. I was an American citizen, and I had as many rights as anyone else," end of quote. I like to emphasize here how it took extraordinary courage to state and act this way when war hysteria and racial profiling were rampant already. Fred was a young person, age 22, living in San Leandro, California, when the war broke out. Born and raised in the Golden State, he was not ready to give up on his fundamental rights ingrained in his country's constitution as the Bill of Rights. He was arrested, then sent to the incarceration camp in Topaz, Utah. This must have been a scary experience for anyone so young who had been already targeted. But Fred didn't budge. His claim of innocence went to the Supreme Court in 1944, which unfortunately at that time accepted the Army's justification for military necessity. It took nearly 40 years for historians to discover how wrong all this was. The military necessity argument was based on no evidence. To be clear, there was no evidence that any Japanese Americans engaged in spy activities or any other anti-American actions. Strikingly, the fact that there was no evidence was known among US officials as of 1942. Thanks to the investigation conducted by the Office of Naval Intelligence, the Federal Bureau of Intelligence, and the Federal Communications Commission. However, the results of these investigations were taken out of the evidence presented to the Supreme Court, leading it to wrongly assert military necessity as of 1944. When this finally came to light, a US District Court in 1983 overturned Korematsu's guilty conviction. But his fight didn't end here. He helped pass the famous Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which gave a public apology and compensation for former Japanese American camp inmates under the presidency of Ronald Reagan. He wanted something bigger than the personal vindication. He wanted a collective victory that ensured that this will never happen again to any American citizen. I teach Michiganders at Michigan State, where Korematsu's history is taught everywhere. It's not only an Asian American history issue, it's also an important lesson in US history, and US history of international relations, I would argue. My students take delight in learning about Korematsu's story because it teaches them how to grasp their nation's past and present. They proudly tell me because it teaches them tell me that they talk to their families and friends about what they learn. And they also tell me that they feel this is a story that goes beyond America's national borders and travel around the world. You can probably tell that I'm not raised here because of the way I speak. And this is contribution of American history of democracy to world history. And this is one of the things that my students take away from Korematsu's story. These students will benefit from knowing that their elected leaders support their desire to learn. As an educator and a scholar, I urge you to make Korematsu Day perpetual. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that testimony. Do you have any questions? I think when his daughter brought up that he never held a grudge or got mad, really speaks to his character, and it was not about him. It was the bigger issue. Thanks for bringing that forward. All right, with that,
I'm sorry, I do have my own testimony, if I may.
Sorry.
It's brief, and thank you all for listening for a long time. I'll try to make it quick. And I'm State Representative Sharon McDonald from Troy. I'm the sponsor of House Bill 4018, which aims to designate January 30th as Fred Korematsu Day in Michigan. And I'm here to speak because he was a great American. Fred Korematsu fought the U.S. government when it did a terrible wrong. And I'm skipping down because you've heard a lot. But I just want to say there is another reason I'm here today, and that is because I'm hoping that Korematsu Day will bring far more attention to this very sad era of American history. Many people don't know about the Japanese American incarceration camps, or they've been told by others that it didn't actually happen. But I can assure you that it did. My husband is a second-generation Japanese American. He was born to Toby and Jim Kubota, both of whom were born in America and forced into incarceration camps as children. Jim was born in Sumner, Washington. I'm so sorry. Jim was born in, I thought it would be easy on my iPad. Jim was born in Sumner, Washington, Toby in Los Angeles. They were 13 and 11 when they were torn from their homes, their friends, their schools, and relocated to camps with their families. Jim went to Minidoka in Idaho, Toby to Manzanar. They lost all of their worldly possessions. They had only themselves. Years later, when I first met my husband's aunts and uncles, they chatted over dinner about people they knew from camp and what blocks they lived on. I quietly surmised that they were talking about summer camps from their youth, but soon realized that they were they were talking about the massive concrete housing blocks they were forced to live in as children. When the prisoners were released from these camps years later, they weren't allowed to return to their home states, so they were finally permanently torn from the West Coast. That's how my parents-in-law ended up in the Midwest. Their families were again told where they had to live, and they were forced to move east. My father-in-law did have some anger about the incarceration when he reached adulthood. He was a quiet, dignified man who seldom raised his voice, but became a fiery orator when it came to President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066. He spoke about it to many, many audiences over the years. And when his work took the family to Phoenix, Arizona, Jim volunteered at the nearby site of the old Gila River internment camp, taking people on tours of the site, explaining to them what the incarcerations were like, and educating them about the immoral policy that interrupted so many innocent lives. For his 80th birthday, Jim organized a trip for 3 generations of family members to visit Manzanar and learn more about the incarcerations. Jim told my husband and me that he especially wanted our 2 daughters, whom we adopted from China, to learn history of the incarceration from him so they would pass down the story to their children. My mother-in-law, Toby, is still living. She turned 90 in January, but sadly, Jim passed away 2 years ago from COVID. By speaking to you today and carrying HB 4018 forward, I'm doing my best to honor Fred Korematsu, as well as my dear father-in-law, Jim Kubota. But we also need to enshrine the true histories of the United States, as some push to erase them. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you will vote yes to support Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution in Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, for that personal touch. With that, Representative McFall moves to report House Bill 4018 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Liberati.
Yes.
Representatives Pahutsky.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Posthumus.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 passes. The bill is reported with recommendation.
With no absent members and no further business, the committee, we are adjourned.